According to most scholars, the history of modern Egypt spans since the emergence of Muhammad Ali's rule in early 19th century and his launching of Egypt's modernization project that involved building a new army and suggesting a new map for Egypt. The definition of Egypt's modern history has varied in accordance to different definitions of modernity. Some scholars date it as far back as 1516 with the Ottomans' defeat of the Mamluks in 1516–17. Muhammad Ali's dynasty became practically independent from the Ottoman rule, following his warfare campaigns against the empire and his ability to enlist large-scale armies, allowing to control Egypt as well as parts of North Africa and Middle East. In 1882, the Khedivate of Egypt becomes a part of the British sphere of influence in the region, a situation that conflicted with its position as an autonomous vassal state of the Ottoman Empire. The country became a British protectorate in 1915 and achieved full independence in 1922, becoming a kingdom under the rule of Muhammad Ali's dynasty, lasting until 1952. Gamal Abdel Nasser established the Republic in Egypt and ended the monarchy rule in Egypt, known as the Republic of Egypt. Following the 1952 Egyptian Revolution, Egypt was ruled autocratically by 3 presidents over the following 6 decades by Nasser from 1954 until his death in 1970. By Anwar Sadat from 1971 until his assassination 1981, and by Hosni Mubarak from 1981 until his resignation in the face of the 2011 Egyptian Revolution. In 2012, after more than 1 year under interim government of Supreme Council of the Armed Forces, with Field Marshal Tantawi as its chairman, elections were held and the Islamist Mohamed Morsi became the first democratically elected head of state in the entire history of Egypt. In 2013, millions of Egyptians in huge rallies and demonstrations were demanding Morsi's resignation. The army announced the ousted of Morsi and preparing for new elections. Khedivate of Egypt, British administration. In 1882, opposition to European control led to growing tension amongst notable natives, the most dangerous opposition coming from the army. A large military demonstration in September 1881 forced the Khedive Tawfiq to dismiss his prime minister. In April 1882, France and the United Kingdom sent warships to Alexandria to bolster the Khedive amidst a turbulent climate, spreading fear of invasion throughout the country. Tawfiq moved to Alexandria for fear of his own safety as army officers led by Ahmed Urabi began to take control of the government. By June, Egypt was in the hands of nationalists opposed to European domination of the country. The naval bombardment of Alexandria by the Royal Navy had little effect on the opposition, which led to the landing of a British expeditionary force at both ends of the Suez Canal in August 1882. The British succeeded in defeating the Egyptian army at Tel el-Kabir in September and took control of the country, putting Tawfiq back in control. The purpose of the invasion had been to restore political stability to Egypt under a government of the Khedive and international controls which were in place to streamline Egyptian financing since 1876. It is unlikely that the British expected a long-term occupation from the outset. However, Lord Cromer, Britain's chief representative in Egypt at the time, viewed Egypt's financial reforms as part of a long-term objective. Cromer took the view that political stability needed financial stability, and embarked on a program of long-term investment in Egypt's productive resources, above all in the cotton economy, the mainstay of the country's export earnings. In 1906, the Denshora incident provoked a questioning of British rule in Egypt. British administration ended nominally with the establishment of a protectorate and the installation of Sultan Hussein Kamal in 1914. But a British military presence in Egypt lasted until June 1956. Sultanate of Egypt. In 1914, as a result of the declaration of war with the Ottoman Empire, of which Egypt was nominally a part, Britain declared a protectorate over Egypt and deposed the anti-British Khedive, Abbas II, replacing him with his uncle Hussein Kamel, who was made Sultan of Egypt by the British. A group known as the WAFD delegation attended the Paris Peace Conference of 1919 to demand Egypt's independence. Included in the group was political leader Saad Zaloul, who would later become prime minister. When the group was arrested and deported to the island of Malta, a huge uprising occurred in Egypt. From March to April 1919, there were mass demonstrations that became uprisings. This is known in Egypt as the 1919 Revolution. Almost daily demonstrations and unrest continued throughout Egypt for the remainder of the spring. To the surprise of the British authorities, Egyptian women also demonstrated, led by Huda Sha'rawi, who would become the leading feminist voice in Egypt in the first half of the 20th century. The first women's demonstration was held on Sunday, 16 March 1919, and was followed by yet another one on Thursday, 20 March 1919. Egyptian women would continue to play an important and increasingly public nationalist role throughout the spring and summer of 1919 and beyond. British suppression of the anti-colonial riots led to the death of some 800 people. In November 1919, the Milner Commission was sent to Egypt by the British to attempt to resolve the situation. In 1920, Lord Milner submitted his report to Lord Curzon, the British Foreign Secretary, recommending that the Protectorate should be replaced by a Treaty of Alliance. As a result, Curzon agreed to receive an Egyptian mission headed by Zaloul and Adli Pasha to discuss the proposals. The mission arrived in London in June 1920 and the agreement was concluded in August 1920. In February 1921, the British Parliament approved the agreement and Egypt was asked to send another mission to London with full powers to conclude a definitive treaty. Adli Pasha led this mission, which arrived in June 1921. However, the Dominion delegates at the 1921 Imperial Conference had stressed the importance of maintaining control over the Suez Canal zone, and Curzon could not persuade his cabinet colleagues to agree to any terms that Adli Pasha was prepared to accept. The mission returned to Egypt and discussed Kingdom of Egypt. In December 1921, the British authorities in Cairo imposed martial law and once again deported Zaloul. Demonstrations again led to violence. In deference to the growing nationalism and at the suggestion of the High Commissioner, Lord Allenby, the UK unilaterally declared Egyptian independence on 28 February 1922, abolishing the Protectorate and establishing an independent Kingdom of Egypt. Sawat Pasha became Prime Minister. British influence, however, continued to dominate Egypt's political life and fostered fiscal, administrative, and governmental reforms. Britain retained control of the Canal Zone, Sudan and Egypt's external protection. King Fuad died in 1936 and Farouk inherited the throne at the age of 16. Alarmed by Italy's recent invasion of Ethiopia, he signed the Anglo-Egyptian Treaty, requiring Britain to withdraw all troops from Egypt, except at the Suez Canal. During World War II, British troops used Egypt as a base for Allied operations throughout the region. British troops were withdrawn to the Suez Canal area in 1947, but nationalist, anti-British feelings continued to grow after the war.